All right. So for the Israel-Gaza war, the Ukraine and Germany are calling for a sustainable ceasefire.
UK and Germany, not the
What?
Ukraine. I thought you said the Ukraine and Germany.
I might have.
Okay.
The Foreign Secretary, David Cameron, has called for a, quote, sustainable ceasefire in the Gaza conflict as he warned that too many civilians had been killed by Israel in spite of its right to eliminate the threat posed by Hamas. In a significant shift in tone by the UK government, Cameron, in a joint article with the German Foreign Affairs Minister, Annalena Baerbock, wrote, "Our goal cannot simply be an end to fighting today. It must be peace lasting for days, years, generations. We therefore support a ceasefire, but only if it is sustainable." It's quite a word salad there. "We know many in the region and beyond have been calling for an immediate ceasefire. We recognize what motivates these heartfelt calls. It is an understandable reaction to such intense suffering, and we share the view that this conflict cannot drag on and on. That is why we supported the recent humanitarian pauses," unquote. It came after it emerged that 3 Israeli hostages killed by the IDF in Gaza were bare-chested and carrying a white flag when they were shot, according to an initial military investigation. Now, keep in mind, as my editorial note, if those had been Palestinians, you just never would have heard about it. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told a press conference late Saturday that they were as, quote, committed as ever to war. Shocker. He said they were determined to fight to the end, and Gaza, quote, will be demilitarized and under Israeli security control following the defeat of Hamas, unquote. The killing of the 3 hostages who were kidnapped by Hamas on 7th October during its assault on southern Israel has triggered widespread anger and incredulity in Israel amid a mounting sense of anxiety over the safety of the remaining hostages in Gaza. According to reports of the IDF probe in the Israeli media, the 3 men, Yotam Haim, Samer El Talalka, and Alan Shamriz, all in their 20s, had somehow escaped their captors and were approaching an IDF position in the Shahaya area of Gaza City. I'm sure I butchered that, where there has been heavy fighting. Cameron and Baerbock write in an article published in the Sunday Times and Welt am Sonntag. So this is why you wanted me to do this.
Yeah, that's why I gave this to you.
In Germany.
So I can rest my voice and not mispronounce all these words.
Quote, Israel will not win this war if their operations destroy the prospect of peaceful coexistence with Palestinians. They have a right to eliminate the threat posed by Hamas, but too many civilians have been killed. Following Biden's comments last week that Israel was losing international support because of its, quote, indiscriminate bombing, U.S. officials have told Israel that its window for conducting major combat operations in Gaza is fast closing. And actually, we have Netanyahu's response.
Go home and get your fucking shine box.
Like they give a shit what he says. The reality is that the events of the past few days around the question of the hostages and on the diplomatic stage have cast a light on a key unresolved tension at the heart of Israel's war against Hamas over its war aims. How to dismantle the threat of Hamas in Gaza while securing the release of those captured. And while Israeli officials have tried to suggest it was the intense military pressure on Hamas that led to last month's ceasefire and hostage deal, the hostage deaths have led to mounting questions over that strategy. I think the best way to eliminate terrorism in Gaza is to create a lot of orphans who are going to grow up remembering what Israel did to their families. That's probably the best way to guarantee Israeli security. What they are ultimately trying to do, and what is painfully obvious, and what their own leaked white paper told us, they're trying to get rid of these people. They're trying to take Gaza. They're trying to create a greater Israel. They'd like to eliminate them from the West Bank. They are trying to create circumstances by which they can argue that the neighboring countries have to take refugees from Gaza for humanitarian reasons, and then they're just going to move settlers in there just like they do with the West Bank. This is a big part of why Israel is losing support in the international community. It's extremely obvious what their intentions are. And with shooting these hostages, that tells you how they're actually conducting this war. You never would have heard about this if these had been Palestinians. This tells you what they would do to Palestinians who are clearly not a threat, who are waving a white flag of surrender. They'd shoot them anyway. This just came to light because they shot their own hostages.
Right.
How many times a day do they do things like this to Palestinians that you never hear about?
Yeah, no, and you hear a lot of coverage in the media about the killing, the accidental killing of their own hostages, as if that's the gravest sin that they've committed since October 7th. Well, right? Like the accidental killing of their own hostages is more noteworthy in the eyes of a guy like Piers Morgan than the carpet bombing of a refugee camp,
Sure.
right? So that's one point. On the bigger point, the fact that the UK and Germany are coming out and calling for ceasefire now, that is pretty significant.
Germany
obviously.
Particularly, because Germany, for obvious reasons, won't say boo to Israel.
No, because they have a lot of guilt, not only about the Holocaust, but I assume they have some guilt about the fact that maybe the Palestinians had to give up their land for the crimes that Germany themselves committed. That's what Katie Halper was talking about. It's a lot of virtue signaling and a lot of bullshit.
Right.
And underneath a lot of virtue signaling is a lot of guilt, right? That's why we always say a lot of the privileged liberal politics is a way of guilt management. It's a way of guilt processing, right? You signal your virtue to cover up for the fact that ultimately where your real politics lie are somewhere quite different. Right? That's why you have Deborah Messing walking around with Douglas Murray now. That tweet came out.
I heard that, but I haven't had time to delve into it.
Yeah, exactly. Which is like I tweeted out. Yeah, the rich shit libs will always side with the right over the left when the chips are down, right? And so that's an example of Germany's
that's
politics.
what I saw that tweet, but I didn't. I was very busy today to get into the context.
Yeah. That was what that was in reference to. But that in the UK is just our bitch on foreign policy. I mean, they backed us in Iraq, So the fact that they and Germany are calling for a ceasefire now, that is significant. One more development against Israel on the world stage. This is why I say they are going to come out of this a pariah state. They are not going to get away with this. And I think this is the latest evidence of that.
Please clap.